Hello, everybody. It's time for another edition of Mic Drop. And this week we've got quite the topical subject, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. So this is something that is getting a lot of buzz because it's going to take effect May 25th of this year, next month. And it's going to bring a lot of changes for people and what we're doing with data and how we're sharing it, how we're saving it, how we're using it. But the good news is it's based out of the European Union. So GDPR, who is affected? Who needs to worry about this? One, people who have businesses in the European Union. If you work with any of the European Union states, you definitely have to follow all these rules because you will be in trouble if you don't. That immediately takes out probably a vast majority of the mic drop audience because we're US based. So what if you are a US based business? Should you be worried as well? No, unless you do business in the EU. So if you sell goods to the EU, if you have services in the EU, if you're marketing to citizens of the EU, then you need to be concerned because you could fall under the purview of the GDPR. But if you're a US business, brick and mortar, you're just selling to people here in America or outside of anywhere outside of the EU, as long as you're not dealing with the EU, you will be okay. So you can just end this mic drop right now and be happy and healthy. Just leave a comment saying, thanks, Mike, for allaying all my fears. If you do business with the EU or you are in the EU, hello, thanks for watching from way over across the Atlantic Ocean. What exactly does this mean for you? So GDPR establishes 8 basic privacy or data rights for a person. And so when I speak about data, they've expanded what your personal information means. Mostly when you think about personal identifiable information, you're thinking about the big stuff like social security number or my credit card information, things that if bad guys got it, you could be in some serious trouble. The GDPR has expanded it past that to personal data. And so personal data can be all that bad stuff in addition to any posts you make on social media, photographs you share online, any sort of like preferences you set, things you like, all of this stuff falls into the purview of personal data. And so now GDPR wants to know what businesses are doing with any of this data, and if you collected it correctly, and if you're using it correctly. And so the 8 rights, the 8 data rights of the GDPR are, first, the right to access. So at any time, 24/7, you have to allow anybody who's within your database access to their data. So a lot of people, that's going to mean you have to create new architectures. You have to create new systems so that you can share that data with users. Number 2, the right to be forgotten. So if somebody says, hey, I'm tired of all this, stop marketing to me, just wipe me out. You have to have the ability to wipe them out completely, gone, never existed. You can't just like turn them off or pause them in your system. You have to wipe them out. And you have to have you have to have systems to do that. Number 3, data portability. So a user has to come to you and they have to be able to say, not only can I get my information, but I want you to give it to me in a format that's easily readable so I can send it off to somebody else to use. So I think that will probably give businesses an entirely new thing to kind of like create there. How do I export this data in a format which can be used anywhere else pretty easily, and what's the mechanism that I can send it to a user? 4, the right to be informed what their data is being used for, and it needs to be given to them before they're actually consenting for that use. So you have to be very clear when you're collecting data. Hey, we're going to take this data and we're going to use it for this, this, and this. Are you okay with it? And they have to explicitly say they are. You can't pre-check the box. You can't imply it. You can't force them to do it. They have to actively say, yes, you can take my data and do all these things you just told me. Number 5, the right to have that info corrected. So if you have something wrong, or if a user finds something wrong on their system, they can respond to you and say, hey, correct this, and you have to have a method to correct it. So another system that might have to be developed with your company. Number 6, right to restrict processing. So what this means is the user is okay with you having their data, but they don't want you to use it for certain things. And so in the GDPR context, processing usually is like when somebody buys something from you and you're sending their information to your shipping company to ship the good to them. So that's a processing. The shipper is processing the data that you collected. So they can limit like who you're letting process that data. So that's another kind of system you have to put in place. Number 7, the right to object. So that's basically people opting out. And not only do you have to be able to give that option to them, but you have to, when they say, I'm done, you have to take them out immediately. I know whenever I unsubscribe to newsletters here in the US, they'll say, oh, it'll take 5 to 7 business days for you to be taken out of our system. Not going to cut it under the GDPR. It needs to be immediate. As soon as that opt-out is processed, they are gone. They are deleted. Right number 2, right to be forgotten. Number 8 and final one, the right to be notified. So this is if you have a data breach and users' data has been stolen, you have 72 hours from when you find out about that breach to notify customers who were affected. We were talking about Facebook last week and how there was a data breach with Cambridge Analytica, and they took 3 years to notify everybody. So that would not have flown under the GDPR. So those are the 8 rights that GDPR establishes that businesses are going to have to follow when dealing with EU members. So what does that mean for you? If you are affected, what are the recommendations? You have until May 25th to fix this. So what should you be looking at? First, map your company's data. So you have to figure out where it comes from, what you're doing with it, where it resides, who can access it. You want to get all that stuff in line so you know exactly where your data is, what you're doing with it, how you're getting it, and that it's fitting all of these requirements for GDPR. 2, determine what data you need to keep. Because I know lots of businesses collect all sorts of data just because they can. And so now rather than open yourself up to liability, only keep the data that you absolutely need. Delete everything else out. 3, put security measures in place. You need to develop safeguards for your data. You need to protect against those breaches, and you need to have procedures if those breaches happen to get that information out as fast as possible so you don't go over that 72-hour mark. 4, review your privacy statements and your data collection points. This is going to be a big one. Make sure all of your email signups, your opt-ins, those boxes are not automatically checked. You're giving them the ability to consent to it. You're not forcing them into it. You want to make sure that all of those things, it's all on the user's end. You're not guiding them into anything. You're just saying, hey, we're going to collect this data. We're going to do this with it. Are you cool with it? And they can say yes or no. So no more pre-checked boxes. And look at your privacy statements. Reevaluate them, see if you need to update them based off of the GDPR recommendations, and you should be set. And then 5, establish procedures for handling all personal data. So we're going to continue getting data, probably even more data in the future, because data is what drives everything these days. So think about how you're getting that user consent, how you're going to delete them if they want to be deleted, how can they be transferred if they ask to be transferred. All of these things that were kind of in those rights I just covered, you got to figure out systems to make those things actually happen. And so that's moving forward. But okay, May 25th happens, you've done all this stuff. What about all of this data you collected on users before GDPR happened? Is it just grandfathered in? Of course not. You're going to have to get re-permissions, and re-permissions is kind of a big deal because it's hard to get that first permission, and now you're going to go out there and get second permission. So I was researching what are the best practices to do this, and it seems like the industry kind of consensus right now is to do something called permission passing. So before May 25th, you want to email your entire database and say, hey, after May 25th, GDPR hits, we need to get your explicit authorization to use all this data. This is what we're going to do with it. Can you please opt in? And they're going to give you that opt-in. You're going to make sure that opt-in follows all the GDPR rules because you want to collect it under the rules, and then you'll be set. Anybody who does not respond to that, delete them. They're gone. So the biggest problem with permission passing is that you are going to lose a substantial chunk of your database. Just accept it's going to happen. But you're going to be in compliance now, and the people who did opt back in, obviously you're more engaged users. They're going to be a higher value user, I would imagine. So you're essentially going to cull your email list. Yes, the number is going to go down, but your quality is going to go way up. And so permission passing, that's what you should do. And that is the quick 10-minute version of GDPR. I will try to link some helpful links in the comments below so you can check those out as well, because it's a huge subject. There's many more questions out there. There's many myths out there. I just didn't have enough time to cover it all. But there you go. GDPR's mic is dropped.